we're very lucky that we have with us this evening somebody who is very new to the heritage field in some ways, or at least she is up to date on all of the most recent technologies, and some of her interests were twigged, in fact, by not actually by the site of a building, but by the news of a building. And she has she is interested in continuing to inform people that way. So we're joined this evening by Hayley Frail, who was a European Studies major at King's College when she encountered a Twitter post about the houses of Queen Street, Halifax, which were due to be demolished for redevelopment or at risk of demolition. She found that on a Twitter post, and it occurred to her that this was a really good way to let other people know about this, about other buildings as they come into the crosshairs of potential redevelopment. So anyway, Hayley is here to tell us about her project, Before It's Gone Halifax. So again, Hayley, thank you and welcome.
Thank you for that wonderful welcome. So yeah, I'm Hayley Frail. I am still currently a European Studies major at University of King's College. I'm also a photographer, and I took this course this past term that just ended with Dr. Jerry Bannister at Dalhousie. That was an introduction to heritage studies course. I have a ton of experience, well, not a ton, but for my level, we'll say, in the field, a decent amount of experience in the heritage field, but wanted something where I could really explore that in a way that I had in other classes before. And so the course allowed us to really be engaged with the heritage field in the city, and talk to some different professionals within the industry and whatnot. And our final project, Dr. Bannister wanted us to create a space online where we could interpret heritage of whatever sort interests us in a space where people could access it from wherever and engage with it from wherever. And I kind of realized in figuring out what I was doing for this course, or for this project, I should say, that there seemed to be a lack of engagement in our own city. And so I wanted to do something centered around changing that, especially trying to engage more young people like myself, who oftentimes have a hard time getting into the heritage field. Just because of a bunch of different barriers, but most of all because there's not really enough spaces where young people themselves are talking about these certain issues. And it kind of sprang out of a Twitter post, believe it or not, that this project was born. So the project is called Before It's Gone Halifax. And you can see the links and stuff there, as long as anyone tell me if you guys can see the slide right now?
Yeah, we got you, Hayley.
Perfect. Love it when things work on Zoom. So yeah, the project is called Before It's Gone Halifax, and it sprung from a Twitter post that I saw one night while I was trying to figure out what I was doing for this project, that made me really, really mad. It was the Twitter post I'm about to switch to right now. So anyone from the city or from Nova Scotia generally, as soon as you see that picture, you know exactly where it is. It's Queen Street in downtown Halifax. These are the Queen Street row houses. And the tweet essentially said, after protests and all of this community organization that I unfortunately didn't know anything about, the Queen Street row houses and then the properties that back them on Birmingham Street have been sold for however many $million, to be torn down and turned into, unfortunately, yet another concrete glass high-rise building, which will be condos. And anyone who lives in the city or in the province knows that over the past 5 years, at least that I've been in the city, we've been losing heritage property after heritage property, and it doesn't really seem to be stopping anytime soon. And so with this project, I wanted to try and do something that would hopefully slow that down a bit, um, and show people where these properties are, which ones we need to be concerned about, and share information. Because I found that just in my own personal experience, I walk past these buildings almost every day, and I had no idea myself that they were set to come down. And there are so many other examples in the city, of places that you pass by every single day, and it's such a part of the architectural face of the city, and you don't realize that it's in danger until it's already gone. So I decided from there that I would start as a photographer for this project, walking around the city as I do all the time. It's one of my favorite pastimes, and try and document as many properties as I could find that had signage up stating that it was up for urban renewal or redevelopment, and just basically make a catalog. Because one thing that I found is that with any heritage properties or really any older buildings, a lot of local news outlets will write articles about them and things, which is great. But because of the crazy news cycle that we go through nowadays, a lot of people just aren't seeing these articles, and they don't have any idea that a house down the road from them could be at risk of coming down. Um, so I wanted to create a stable space where all of this information was collected. And then what went from, oh, I will go around and take pictures, turned into, okay, now I need to understand the laws behind this. I need to try and understand like the community organization aspect of all of this. I need to understand better the housing crisis in Halifax, because as many of us know, a lot of these heritage properties or these older buildings that, in my opinion, oftentimes should be heritage property, are oftentimes the places where students like me or working class income folks can actually afford to live. And the high rises that are going up in their place are completely out of our price range. And then finally, one of the biggest reasons is that I've worked in the heritage and tourism industry my entire working life, which admittedly, because I'm only 23, hasn't been super long. But one of the biggest things that I've always heard whenever I was working in museums on the waterfront here in Halifax is people coming to visit here always are so enchanted by the uniqueness of our city. And I think that even in one of these, so these tweets on the sides of the photo are actually responses from the public on the initial tweet that I saw. So the first one in the top left here, it says, the most common comment from tourists is that Halifax is unique. We don't need to be a city of steel and glass. Growth is great, but this architecture takes away from the charm and small town and a city feel for which we are known. Get better architects, get architects with better vision. And I kind of agree with that statement wholeheartedly. Because in my experience, whenever I talk to visitors of Halifax or just the Maritimes in general, the biggest thing that they say is, this is a place like no other. And usually what they mean is it's a place like no other because of our architecture and because of the styles of our cities, our towns, our small communities. And in reality, if we keep on going down the road that we're on right now, we're going to lose all of those spaces, and Halifax won't be Halifax anymore. And I don't know about you guys, but I want Halifax to be Halifax because I love this city. I love the spaces that we get to walk by every day, like the Queen Street row houses. And I just wanted to do something, whatever small part I could, to try and make sure that people got to see it before it is gone, and B, try and stop the loss of these properties if we could. Um, so I've collected a couple of photos here. These are some of the properties that on my initial walks I found in the city that were at risk, or as you can see with this pink building on Carlton Street, are already in the process of being torn down. So on the left-hand side, at the top, we have a Google Street View from, I believe, about 2 years ago of Carlton Street. All of these houses were lived in. I'm quite sure that most of them were flats. There's actually a house just out of frame on this shot, um, on the right hand side, where as a student a lot of my friends have lived in flats in the building over the years, and it's part of what's being torn down on this entire street. This is part of the center plan redevelopment that is has just claimed a whole block between Bliss and Binney Street on Roby Street. And this street was particularly shocking to me just because, like, I knew how many of my friends who were students have lived in these flats over the years, right? And the houses on this street, I mean, they've got some chipped paint and the window is broken in the bottom photo of the pink property. But that wasn't the case 2 years ago when the top photo was taken, right? They look like perfectly livable flats. And that's really one of the biggest issues that I'm finding with this project, is how many spaces that, with a little bit of TLC or a little bit of care, could easily make it another 100, 200 years, and that could provide space for the people who need it, that give Halifax the character that it has, that are just being torn down um, without seemingly any thought for the good of everyone in the city, but only the good of a select few. Um, and so that's one of the spaces that I'm kind of writing as like a loss, unfortunately, because that whole strip is coming down. On the right hand side, however, we have one of the hopefully less rare over time wins. This is a property on Tower Road. You can even see in the Google Street View shot up above that the heritage sign for that part of the city is right in front of this property. And so this was a property that you can see it had a beautiful little yard. The house is gorgeous. And I saw one of those development white signs go up on the side of it and was super nervous that we were losing yet another heritage property. This one I'm calling a win because the folks who have bought the property and are redeveloping it have decided not to actually tear down the house, but instead moved it to a different spot on the property and put a new foundation under it. And even in the past couple of days, I've been walking by and seem to be actually restoring it quite a bit. There are a couple of other success stories in the city, particularly one that I can think of on Queen Street, where there was a house just across from the parking lot for the Dow Engineering School, where instead of tearing the whole property down, they've updated it internally quite a bit and given it a nice facelift, and it's being saved and actually turned into pretty nice apartments by the looks of it. So there are spaces within the city where we are seeing success stories. And basically, one of the other big things of this project is I wanted to show people not only the spaces that we could lose or that are at the chance of being lost, but also the ways in which we can sustainably save these spaces, but also find a way to not only save them, but make them better for the future, and also make sure that we take care of the heritage that they already have, right? Um, so I'm just going to flip to the next slide. So this is kind of my goals for the project. I will admit, if any of you who have already gone and followed the social media accounts, you probably noticed that there's only one post. The reason for that is, like I said, I'm still a university student and I just finished all of my exams and then immediately started a new job. So I haven't had time to get up all of my content yet, but it is coming, don't worry. The other reason that I kind of wanted to hold off is because I wanted to talk to you folks at the Heritage Trust beforehand, and to any other visitors from the public who might have pertinent knowledge, to help me achieve the goals that I want to achieve with this project. So to go over those, the most important and the most ground level thing that I wanted to do with this was to raise awareness and provide a stable space for collection, um, of images and information about these properties. Because, like I mentioned earlier on, I just found that there was a huge lack of any like centralized space where you could go and look at properties in the city, that were at risk in a way that people could find accessibly. So you can go onto government websites and find proposals to take down buildings or to redevelopment proposals and things of that sort, but they aren't super accessible to the public, especially young people who use these platforms like Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all of the different social medias. And they're really one of the biggest demographics that I feel we should be targeting, because in reality, in the next 10 years, they're the people that are going to be looking at living in these flats like me and my friends did, right? So I wanted a space where we could document that, have it just stay and not be constantly changing or moving, but where you could go and look through and find information about different spaces. Secondly, I wanted to both get your help and help for other people to interpret confusing government documents. As part of the project, I've been trying to like pull some information from specifically the Heritage Property Act, and I do not speak legalese, so it's been super confusing. But I want to find a way to make that information more accessible, because I've found that myself and a lot of other people have a ton of preconceptions about what that act does. And from what I could gather while trying to sparse through it, it doesn't necessarily do those things, or those things aren't necessarily concrete in a lot of ways and can actually be changed. So I wanted to make a space for people to better understand those types of documents. I wanted to provide information about the architectural heritage and character of the city, specifically that of working class homes, because let's be honest, more often than not, it's not your big grand doctors' houses that are being lost, but it's the houses of the working class folks who have been such a big part of this city really since its inception, right? So I wanted to make sure that there was a space where we're not only documenting the super ornate kind of well-off spaces, I suppose, but also the spaces where, you know, your common person in Halifax would have lived at whatever given time period in the city, and teach people about the elements of those spaces. I wanted to collect community opinion, which hopefully through this is a good way to do it. And we'll be having a little bit of an open discussion afterwards, to talk about some stuff if you guys have some interest or some questions or whatever you might have. I wanted to make a space to question new development plans and to kind of combine that community opinion in questioning, like, is this actually what people in our city want, or is this what we're being told we want by the people who are buying up these properties? And then finally, like I had mentioned just earlier, I wanted to make a space to celebrate the wins when we do manage to save a property, or when a property gets to change in a certain way, but change in a good way, and still gets to exist past its old self and kind of into its new self. So I am going to drop down this slideshow because unfortunately I cannot see any of you when it's playing. And I'd really like to open up the floor and like talk to you guys a bit about all of this. So there you all are. So if you wanted to like throw on your cameras, that would be amazing. And I think Holly is going to help me with some mediation of questions, and if you guys have any information you can send out or help me out with, that'd be great.
So Hayley, first of all, I'll jump in right quick. As someone that's in your age demographic, I super love that you're interested in this, and I love that you're kind of taking to the social media platforms. I'm just wondering, although you've only kind of just gotten started and dipped your toes in this, kind of what the feedback has been like. Have you had a lot of response from young folks? Has it been kind of all over the grid as far as the response? I know there was some retweeting happening. How has that been?
Yeah, so I'm glad that you asked that. It's actually been like surprisingly good. And I don't want to say surprising as in like I didn't believe that young people were interested in this, but surprisingly good as in I've already had a lot of people like wanting to get involved, not just to watch along or be along for the journey. I have some friends in Toronto who, as soon as I made this known that I was doing this, immediately hopped on and were like, hey, we want to watch how this goes and potentially do this here. And like my friend has already been like sending out the information to a bunch of her pals who are into community organizing. So it would be great to see if this kind of travels into other cities who are having the same issues as we are here in Halifax. I also have some friends, because I go to King's, who are in the journalism school, who have been like investigating this and writing bits and pieces here and there, who, because of the project or in part because of the project, have come to me and been like, this is something that I want to get involved in or write on. Let me know once you start getting some information and stuff coming in, because like I'd like to pay some attention to this. And yeah, I've also just had a lot of people around my age or our age or even a bit younger, some high school students and things, sort of going, oh, I kind of knew that this was an issue, but I didn't really realize the extent of how this was an issue. So I'm gonna follow this and like see where this goes, sort of thing, which is really the most encouraging, because like the younger that you can get the kids to take interest, the better.
You know, this is really, it's just so heartening that somebody in your age group is interested. No, really, because I think, you know, a lot of people have heard me say that one of the really unfortunate things that's happened here is that this fallacy has been propagated, which says that only old people are interested in old buildings and young people are interested only in new buildings. And of course, that means creating a constant new monoculture of everything's exactly even aged. If you take out everything, I mean, it's completely even aged and there is nothing there.
Yeah.
There's a lot more conversation to be had. Well, listen, thank you very, very, very much, Hayley. And
Thank you for having me.
and I think it's going to be really interesting too, to the degree that you have this as a model for other cities, potentially that you have other people watching this.
Yeah,
So that's the other thing I'd like to add to all this. So thank you for also, you know, for having some eyes on this, how this city progresses, and also how your initiative to work on any city progresses. So.
well, thank you.
So I guess, I don't know if we have any specific questions, but this is fantastic, and we'll be talking to you soon, I hope.
Amazing.
Okay. Thanks very, very much. Good
All
night,
right.
everybody.